Welcome to Sikbaggers YouTube channel. I'm Steve. Today, I'm very excited to make this video for you. I believe it was a couple of years ago at one of the bagger shows, I seen a set of wheels on a bike that just absolutely blew me away. What blew me away is when the bike rode past me and all of the light and stuff that caught on this wheel was just amazing. I immediately went to my phone, looked up the wheel, bookmarked it, and then I just kind of set on it. It's been a little bit of time since I've done that, but now that I've done the Zephyr Blue conversion on the Street Glide back here, I'm ready to put these wheels on there. Absolutely love them, and they are from Sinister. If you've never heard of Sinister wheels, look them up. I'll put the link down in the description down below. They have a huge selection of wheels. If you're looking for a brand new set of wheels for your bike, do not sleep on Sinister wheels. Go to their website, check it out. They have a ton of wheels over there, including the fat spoke wheels. And from what I just read a couple of days ago, I didn't know this when I ordered this, but they also do fat wheels too. And I happen to know a guy with a Road Glide sitting over there with a pretty boring fat front wheel on there, so it's something we may be doing out here just in a little bit, so keep your eye out for that as well. So like I said, they got the spoke wheels on there, but if you go to the bad boy collection right here, you'll see all of these different wheels that are on their website. And this list, this page just keeps scrolling and keeps scrolling. They have a ton of wheels, but also make sure to go to the top menu there and click on Sinister accessories, and you'll see a lot of other stuff for your bike, not just wheels. They got two full sets of floorboards, shifter pegs, brake pedals, stuff like that. One's called the Sage, one's called the Evil. Check out those. Those are made by Sinister in-house. And that's another thing I want to mention too. These wheels are made right here in the United States. These are not, they don't come from overseas and then chromed here and then sent out to you. They're actually made, chromed, colored, black, whatever colors you want. They do have custom colors. You can get custom powder coating as well, but you will have to call them if you want that. And ordering the wheels is super easy too. Just click on the wheel that you like, and then you'll see all these drop down menus here, and that just covers all the different things that they need to know to build the right wheel for your bike. The most important thing on there is when you get the wheel, it's going to come with new bearings. So you need to know if your bike is ABS or non-ABS, because the bearings are a little different for those bikes. So make sure, and that's one of the things in the drop down menu there, is ABS or non-ABS. And you can get matching pulleys for this. You can get matching air cleaner for this. There's all kinds of matching parts that they will make to match your wheels. So if you want to deck out your entire bike and make it more uniform, they've got you covered. So one of the other parts that I'm going to be putting on with the wheels today from Sinister is a chrome pulley from Willie Shiny. Now, I did a video for Willie Shiny about 5 or 6 years ago when we first got this Street Glide back here. We did a 19-inch chrome enforcer, which is the enforcer is the wheel that came on the bike. He sends you a chrome enforcer and you send him back your OEM one, and he just cleans it up and re-chromes it right and sells it to the next person. So we did the chrome wheels on this bike not too long ago, and at the time I really didn't think about it, but I had the stock pulley on the rear and it's just black, kind of brushed, and I put it on a chrome wheel. At the time I went ahead and put it on because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the big swoopy bags and stuff. You don't really see it that much, but me, I knew it was there. So after I thought about it for a while, I got in contact with Willie Shiny again and said, hey, let's do a chrome pulley exchange. I'm gonna put them on those wheels, but now we got the new wheels, so I'm gonna put the chrome pulley on those. But just so you know, Sinister does have matching rear pulleys. It was just an oversight on my part, and it was in between the wheels, and I did the exchange with him, but we have it, so we're going to run it on this wheel. If you get over to Sinister and you have any questions on anything, maybe you're going down the drop down menu and you just don't understand something, you're not quite sure about something on your bike, give them a call. But they've taken the time to answer all of my questions over there, and thoroughly as well. They don't skip over anything. They make sure that you understand everything 100% before you actually make your order. And to me, that's pretty amazing. That customer service goes a million miles with me. But I'm like a kid in a candy store. I can't wait to get these wheels on here, and this is going to be kind of a lengthy video anyway because we're doing front and rear. None of this is hard. It's just a lot of little bitty steps to get the job done, and that's what I'm here for, is to walk you through that so you can do this at home. All the tools that I use today will be linked down in the description, so if you need anything specific, make sure to check out the link down below. Now, changing out the front tire on this can be done in a couple of different ways. One, leaving the fender on. Two, taking the fender off. In my situation, with it being on a lift, I'm going to take the 4 bolts out, and I got some little serial lights back here, but the 4 bolts out of the fender and go ahead and spin the fender off and set that off to the side. It's going to make this go a lot faster. If you want to leave the fender on, you obviously have to get the bike jacked up high enough to get the tire and the wheel out. So that's what we're going to do quick. I'm just going to kind of speed this up. Like I said, you got a bolt here, and same on the other side. Now the next thing we're going to do is pull our brake calipers right here. You will need a 12-point socket for this. I'm going to get this up in the camera so you can see it. You see the inside of that socket, there are 12 points. The bolt on here are 12 points. If you use a regular 6-sided socket on that, you're going to strip that bolt completely out, and you're going to find yourself up at Harley buying a new one. You get this bolt and this bolt, and if you have ABS, you're going to have an extra wire that comes down here, and it's going to go to a metal plate that sets underneath these bolts. That's the only thing difference between ABS and non-ABS on doing this. Now this bike is non-ABS, but if you have ABS, you're going to watch that wire go into that plate, pull these bolts out, and let that thing come down. It's not a big deal, it's just a little plate. So we're going to bust these loose. We're going to pull straight out on it like this and pull it off. Right now it's a great time to go ahead and check your brake pads, because it's literally that easy to pull your brake caliper off and check these pads. So just make sure when you have these off, you're not hitting the brake. We're going to take our Harley Davidson high-speed brake caliper holder bags that we have here, and we're going to pull this off to the side, and I'll just tie that around something so it stays out of our way. Just going to repeat that process on the other side. Now my axle may look a little different than your axle. I do have the flushless axle with the caps on them. If you just have a normal axle, you're going to have a big nut here and a nut on the other side. But all of the 14 and up have this pinch bolt right here. So that's the next thing we have to do, is get this pinch bolt out. And that was a 6mm, by the way. From here, I just take a little screwdriver. If you have this style, you got to get this cap off. It's just held on by a little rubber O-ring. So we get that off. With this style axle on the other side, the cap is actually pressed into the fork. So we just have to spin this side to get it out. If you're doing a stock axle, you're going to have the nut on the other side, and this side will have like a round piece with a hole through it. You can take a large screwdriver and put through that hole, and it's going to help you hold the axle while you break it free. Now that I've got it loose, I'm going to let my jack down until the tire just barely touches the jack table. If you're doing it on a jack, do that to the floor. You want to get as much pressure off that axle as you can. When you're pulling your axle out, you've got spacers on both sides. Now mine are cone spacers from Harley Davidson, so they're a little bit different than the stock ones. So now when I start to pull this axle, I have to watch my spacer on the other side. So I'm going to hang on to that spacer and go ahead and pull that axle completely out. I'm going to roll this forward, and I'm going to take out my spacers. We're going to roll our wheel forward, and we're going to get it off here. Now with your new wheel and tire, you're going to want to pay attention to the arrow that's on the tire, and that tells you which way this goes on the bike. So if we follow along the sidewall of the tire, we can see an arrow right here, and it's pointing that way. So we're going to want to turn this thing around. Now we've got our arrow pointing forward, and that's how it goes on the bike. You're going to roll that into place. I'm going to give our spacers a little wipe down here, get them cleaned up. It's easier to do this now. Now since I just recently changed the wheels on this bike, we had already lubed up the axle, and what I use on this is anti-seize. So this stuff right here, I'll put a link in the description down below, or you can pick this up at the hardware store, but you can check out the one on Amazon and bookmark it, whatever, so when you get to the hardware store, you're getting the right stuff. You pull your axle off, just give it a good wipe down, put some anti-seize on it. We're going to set our spacers in, we're going to walk it back in like that so they don't slip out. Now if you haven't moved your jack or your bike and you're having a hard time getting the other side right back in, it's because your tires tilted a little bit or something, so you may have to lift up, push around, and instead of hitting this with the palm of my hand, I will use like a dead blow hammer like this or a rubber mallet. We don't want to damage anything, we just want to lightly tap it in. Now we've hit the other side and it's ready to be threaded. torque specs on this one, this is a 2014. Remember to check your service manual, but mine 70 to 75 foot-pounds, and on the pinch screw it's going to be 18 to 22 foot-pounds. Once that's back on, we'll put our cover back on. This just simply pops into place like that. Now, once again, on a standard axle, one side will have a place for your socket, the other side will not. It'll just be a round thing with a hole in it. Get you a big fat screwdriver, stick it through there, and make sure that you hold the one side while you're torquing the other, and that'll keep that from spinning. Next thing we're gonna do is put our brake calipers back on, and the torque spec on that is 16 to 24, I believe. So our last pinch screw was 22, so we're just going to leave it on that. So it makes it easy to remember. You do your pinch screw last and then go to your caliper. Your torque wrench is already set. Remember, ABS model, go ahead and put your wire, your plate back in. But when you're putting these bolts back in, make sure that you're not pinching that wire. So now we're going to get started on the rear wheel. But the first thing we're going to do is talk about my mistake. Now I got matching front discs for the front wheel, but when I looked at the rear wheel, I completely skipped over the rear disc. So I had to jump back on the website and order a rear disc. Also, when I did the last set of rear wheels, I put the stock pulley on there, which is like a black contrast cut, goofy looking thing that doesn't really match chrome wheels too well. One thing for sure, I'm going to get to show you how to install rotors if you need to. So that's not something that we did on the front because the wheel already came with the rotors installed. So if you order them correctly from Sinister, they will come already installed. But since I didn't, it's going to give me the opportunity to show you how to put one on. So the first thing we're going to do is grab our disc. You'll see on one side, of course, on this one, it does have their name on it right here. So obviously that's the top, right? But if it didn't have that on there, you could look for these little washer recesses on here. That's going to go to the top. The back side is not going to have them. You're going to want that flush onto the wheel. So we're going to slide that into place, line up our holes, and we'll get our polished bolts out of the bag that Sinister also sent. So when you're dealing with taking the discs off or putting new ones on, even if you're just swapping them from an old wheel to a new wheel, you always want to use new fasteners. You're going to lose torque value on these once you torque these down. So once you take these out, you can throw them in your bin, maybe use them for something else down the road, but do not stick them back in your rotor. And it's very important at this point to also make sure that you have a service manual for your bike. The torque specs that I'm going to give you today are for my bike. This is a 14, so this is going to probably pertain to 14, 15, 16, and more than likely, without looking, on up into 23. But just make sure that when you're doing this, to get a service manual, you can find them free all day long on the internet. Make sure you get one for your bike and check the torque specs on that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a touch of blue Loctite to each one of these. Let that spin get all around the threads. We're going to hand start them. Don't ever start these with any kind of wrench or anything. Just do it by hand. Just get your blue Loctite on there. Let it get around a little bit. Now that they're all hand started, now I can grab my battery operated ratchet. These are a Torx 45. It's going to be a 30 to 45 foot-pounds. So we're going to set our wrench and we'll torque it down in a star pattern again. And it's easier, maybe easier to get this wheel on the ground so it's not moving on you. I just kind of push it up against the wall there and it keeps it from spinning while I'm torquing it. As you can see, I did get the chrome cush hub assembly too. So inside here, you have a big rubber cush hub that sets in here, which you'll see that here in just a little bit when we get the other wheel off. And then your pulley is going to set in with that. It doesn't bolt on, it just sets in there, and that rubber cush hub kind of takes some of the torque, the initial torque when you give it gas. It kind of acts like a rubber compensator to take some of that initial jerk off of there. So, and this is going to take the place of the black one, right? So on this side, you can see these spins, and your cush hub rubber sets in here. And on the back side of this, you can see this. So this ultimately is going to set in here like this with rubber in between it and take some of that shock out. So this is ready to go on here. This is ready to go on the bike, but we do need to get over there and get that rear wheel pulled so we can get this one installed. So let's do that. So before we pull this rear wheel, we need to discuss the belt tension. You can see the rear axle right here, and you can see this cam shaped kind of funny. It's thin on one side. So on a swing arm, there's a little plate on here that cam sets up against, right? So when you turn the axle, it's pushing on that cam plate and it's pulling the axle back because it's getting thicker. So that's going to adjust your belt tension. So the first thing I like to do is just get a marker and mark 2 spots on the cam and go straight across to the cam plate so it matches. So you're just drawing a straight line. And you're going to do that on both sides. So when you're putting this back together, theoretically, all you have to do is line up those lines and your belt is going to be back in the same tension that it was when you pulled it off. Now we'll check that with a belt tension tool after we get done. So you can see the axle on this side. We've got a retainer clip on this. We just take a big flathead screwdriver and we just pop that off. So I'm going to use a 36 millimeter on this side, and I am going to use a little bit of a cheater because these are pretty tight. I'm going to go ahead and try to break this one loose. We can go ahead and take this nut off. And I might mention, and I'm going to mention here too as well, I have air ride on my bike, so I can extend my rear shocks full length, and it gets my axle underneath this bar. And equally on the other side, when you're going to put that nut on, it may be right in front of this saddlebag bar. And I don't have dual exhaust on this bike. I have a side dump pipe. So you may find yourself fighting with the exhaust, so you may have to loosen the clamp on your exhaust over here and remove that slip-on one side, and you may have to remove this saddlebag rail. It just depends on your setup. So now we need to remove the rear caliper from the caliper arm that goes around the axle. Get a bolt here and a bolt here. So we pull that out. Now we can lift this caliper up. Just be careful that you don't hit your rim. And you could bring this up and set this on your floorboard. I'm just going to set it right here for right now. Now right here you can see the cam lock. We're just going to pull that off the axle. Now what we want to do is drop the bike down until the wheel is on the table, but just barely. If you're doing this on the ground, do it on the ground. Make sure the wheel is just barely touching the ground. You want to take a little pressure off of this axle. You take a little dead blow hammer or rubber mallet. Another thing I want you to watch when you're pulling your axle out is there's a spacer right here. You can see the spacer. It's got 2 black lines on it. You want to pay attention to where these black lines are. They're offset to one side. So when you're putting this back together, maybe you need to take a picture of it or whatever, but make sure that you put the black lines in the same position. They're going to be to the outside, closest to the swing arm, and not up against the wheel. Now before I knock the axle all the way out, you can see our cam tensioners out here away from the tab on the swing arm, and the other one's completely off. Now we got that wheel pushed all the way forward on both sides, and we should be able to grab this belt now. Just be careful when you're pulling on this that you don't pinch your fingers in there. But we're going to pull the belt off. Then I have to work it around my air ride. Now we have that off. Now we can pull this axle. Now we can roll that wheel back just a little bit and get those spacers out of there. The left spacer is just a thin spacer like this. There's no markings on it, so that doesn't go in any particular order. Now with this wheel being an 18, I got to really crank the bike way up to slide that thing out. And you'll have to do the same thing if you're doing this on the ground. Now, my lift table does have a dropout plate, so I'll get it up pretty far, and then I'll slide that dropout plate out, and we'll get that wheel out of there. Now, we're talking about swapping this out a while ago, but we do need the cush drive out of the inside of this. So you're just going to simply pull this off. Once you get this out, you're just going to pull on this, and you can see right there that that's the cush drive. So you want to inspect this really good and make sure it's not cracked, dry rotted, busted, chipped, anything like that. Make sure it's in good order, and then we'll just transfer this over to the new wheel. Now, it's important when you're putting this on, you'll see the back side, how it has these big fat grooves in between, and then it also has a groove in it. The groove in it goes on that spline. So it can set like that, but that's not correct. We want to turn it and make sure that those grooves set inside each one of these, not the gap in between them. So we're going to set that on there like that. And then on this side, these pieces actually go in the gaps in between. Just like that. Now that is ready to go back on the bike. We're going to take some anti-seize and we're going to put it on the edge of the bushing. Wipe down our rear axle, anti-seize. And this is really one of those do as I say, not as I do things. When you're doing anti-seize or any kind of chemicals like this, you really should have a glove on so your body's not soaking up all this nasty stuff, but you know, that's me. Gonna get our swing arm pretty close to the wheel where the axle goes in. On the other side, 2 lines facing out. I'm gonna push this over, push that in, so that'll stay in place now. Get that spacer in, kind of get everything lined up. We'll put our axle in. Doesn't line up, use your jack. And we got that on. Now, before you push this all the way in, it's important that you have this turned down here. So underneath your shock, and then go ahead and push it in. Now remember, that cam over there is welded to the axle, so it won't move. This one has a flat spot on it, and it's round, so it only goes on one way. And if you look at the top of the axle, right here, it's got a flat spot on it, so that's where the flat spot on that cam goes. All right, so we can turn that. You can see once again how it moves it. We're gonna put our axle nut back on. So for right now, with just that nut on the other side, I'm just gonna put my wrench on here and I'm gonna pull this back. And you can see that the tension on the belt is gonna try to pull it forward. So we have to torque the other side down just a little bit to hold it to keep from springing back forward, but it's still loose enough to adjust the belt. We're gonna put about 15 to 20 foot-pounds of torque on this nut, so it's just kind of snug on the swing arm. Then we can come back over here and we can turn this until our lines line up. Right, and you'll know if you've got enough tension on it when you go to turn this. You'll see that belt was just tightening. When I let go, it's not springing back forward. I still have enough snug on it that it's holding it in place, but I can still turn it. We're going to line up our cam marks just like that. The final torque on this is 95 to 105 foot-pounds. Now, if I had a regular fender on this bike, I could just stand at the back of the bike, hold this side, and torque that side at the same time. But I don't. It sticks way out, so it's hard for me to do by myself. Now we have that torque 95 to 105 foot-pounds. We're going to double check our marks again. Still on this side, so technically it still should be on this side. Dead on. So now we put our clip back on our axle. so that doesn't come off. We're going to take a big flathead screwdriver and we're going to open up these pistons as much as we can to help us get this back on. We can put our brake caliper back into place, just making sure that we don't hit the wheel too much. Slide our rear caliper into place. Rear brake calipers, 43 to 48 foot-pounds. So checking the belt tension on a bike with air ride, it can be a little bit tricky because the more air we put in the bike and we lift it up, the tighter the belt gets. When we air it out, the looser the belt is, right? So we want to get the bike at ride height position. Optimum ride height position is when the frame of the bike is parallel with the ground. So doing it on a lift table like this, I will set the bike at ride height and then I will lift my jack up to it just barely touches the bottom of the bike because I'm doing it by myself and I have to keep the bike stable, right? So I'm just barely taking a little bit of weight off the bike. You can see this bike is not, I mean, it's just barely on that jack. So that's how you set the bike up to check the belt tension if you have air ride. If you don't have air ride, you're fine. You're just going to go from here on. You're going to take a belt tension tool like this. On the bottom of this, you're going to see a mark with a number 10, right? That's 10 pounds of upward pressure. There's a spring in here. So if I push this, that's 10 pounds of pressure when that rubber O-ring hits that 10-pound mark. On your belt guard, you got a sight window where you can see your belt. And you have lines on here. So each one of these lines is 1/8 of an inch. Our service manual says 1/4 to 7/16. On here, we're going to use the top of this cradle, right? We're going to set this in here. Make sure that our rubber washer is pushed all the way up. We're going to push this up until this washer hits that 10-pound mark, and then we're going to count our lines. We're there right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to keep it easy to remember, you want to be between the 4th and the 6th line. Yeah, that's what's up. So these wheels turned out exactly how I thought they would. Absolutely love them. Like I said, I've been looking at these wheels for a long time and was super stoked about getting them put on the bike. Absolutely zero hiccups from ordering all the way to installing. Everything went smoothly. I didn't have to stop 5 times because something didn't fit. It's really, really nice and seemingly kind of rare anymore to get a product in and everything fits and goes smoothly, and I'm not out here making up 54 new cuss words. So the only hiccup I had was my dumbass fault, right? I overlooked the rear disc. I don't know how I did that. The front ones came on the wheel because I ordered it. They had it all installed. All I had to do is just put the wheel on. The rear wheel, I had to show you how to put it on, which it worked out. At least you got to see maybe you're not getting rotors from them and you want to swap your rotors over. Like I said, go over to the website and check them out because they have a ton of wheels over there. And listen, I've had these wheels bookmarked in my brain for a while. And even when I got on the website to go order these, I was starting to second guess myself because they have so many cool looking wheels on there, right? In the end, I stuck to my plan and I got the diabolical wheels. So, and don't forget to check out Willie Shiny as well. If you want to do a chrome swap thing with him, you can go over there and check out his website. Like I said, we'll be doing the chrome front calipers on this, and pretty much everything on this bike will be chrome after that. But you know the deal. If you got any questions on this video, the wheels, the tools, anything, drop it in the comment section down below. I'll try to help you the best that I can. I'm gonna get out of here, get myself cleaned up, because it is late in the afternoon and this fat boy is hungry. I hope to catch you in the next video, but until then, as always, be safe, keep your knees in the breeze. Thanks for checking out the video. Don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe popping up over here. And don't forget to check out the rest of the channel, because we have a ton of bagger related and soft tail videos on our channel. And to get you started, maybe you can check out this one or this one. I'm not really gonna say anything else. You can just click one of those and take you over to another video.